Last week we talked about famous horses that were part of nobility and royalty. This week we're going to talk about the horses that are famous because they were involved in times of conflict or they were movie stars. Now, the ones that were involved in times of conflict were extremely vital in the survival of soldiers and became famous for their various actions, behaviors, or influence. Most often you picture them as this huge cavalry charger or an officer's mount, such as the horse for George Washington. However, a horse's role was more varied and more important than just that. Their contribution included carrying and pulling supplies, ammunition, artillery, and even the wounded when vehicles weren't nearby or weren't able to get to the men and women that needed them. Without these hard-working animals, things would have functioned quite differently, and many soldiers would have lost their lives. In the late 1860s and early 1870s, one horse stood out named Comanche. Captain Miles Keogh of the 7th Cavalry liked the look of Comanche and bought him for his own personal mount and was to only be ridden in battle. In 1868, while fighting in Kansas, the horse was wounded in the hindquarters, or the back end, by an arrow, but continued to let his rider fight from his back. Thus, the horse was named Comanche in honor of his bravery. Now, this horse was wounded many more times and always exhibited the same toughness that he did the very first time. On June 25th, 1876, the captain rode Comanche at the Battle of Little Bighorn. That was led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer for the last time. Comanche was found 2 days after the battle, badly wounded. An excerpt from one of the soldiers said, "As the men looked up and searched the broken terrain with weary, tearful eyes, down by the river, a horse was struggling to get to its feet. Several of the men recognized the horse because of its peculiar buckskin-like color. It was Comanche, the favorite mount of the captain. He had apparently sustained at least 7 wounds, and his coat was matted and dirty. After a year spent recovering at Fort Lincoln, Comanche was never ridden into battle again. He became a celebrity and took part in various ceremonies and parades where he was celebrated as a symbol of Custer's memory till his final days." Did you know? It is said, but not proven, that Comanche was the only living survivor after the Battle of Little Bighorn. Our next horse is Sergeant Reckless. Sergeant Reckless was a Mongolian mare that was part of the Korean War. She was purchased by the United States Marine Corps in 1952 and was used to transport supplies and evacuate soldiers when needed. The mare was injured at least twice during that particular war, and she received her nickname for her fearless nature and was a very, very smart horse. She became a favorite of the unit that she served under, and she loved all of the men. She even had a really valuable quality about her. She liked to eat scrambled eggs with the soldiers. In 1953, during the battle for Outpost Vegas, this fearless horse conducted 51 solo rides in one day. What that means is she made over 50 trips across various rice paddies and up steep mountain trails to the front lines and back without anyone having to ride her or lead her. She did it all on her own. During that battle, she was injured twice, but she kept making the journey without stopping. In 1953, Sergeant Reckless was given the rank of sergeant and retired. She also was awarded 2 Purple Hearts, a Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal, a Presidential Unit Citation with Bronze Star, National Defense Service Medal, Korean Service Medal, United Nations Korea Medal, a Navy Unit Commendation, and a Republic of Korea Presidential Unit citation. After having lived a long and interesting and productive life, she passed on in 1968. Her exact age is debatable. Did you know? Sergeant Reckless was originally bought for $250 at a racetrack in 1952. She also was said to have carried 386 rounds of ammunition, weighing almost 4,000 kilograms, or around 8,800 pounds, while walking more than 35 miles. She would also sleep in the soldiers' tents at night, and would not only eat scrambled eggs, but pancakes and coffee as well. She was also the most decorated horse in American history. While those two horses were famous for their military careers, most of the time, when you think of someone famous, you instantly think of television and movies. Horses helped portray different emotions in the various storytelling in television and movies, and helped to create realism in different scenes. With some specialized training, a horse can do just about anything. They can be used to help the hero of the story travel on a long journey, or they can show the bond between a person and a horse. One of the most famous Hollywood horses belongs to Trigger. He was officially known as the smartest horse in the movies, and he belonged to the king of cowboys, Roy Rogers. He was born between 1932 and 1934 with the original name of Golden Cloud. He was a 15-hand Palomino thoroughbred quarter horse cross, and at the age of 3, he was sold to a stable that provided horses for the movie industry. Being part of that stable, he was able to star in his first film as a horse for Olivia de Havilland, who played Maid Marian in the 1938 movie The Adventures of Robin Hood. And while Golden Cloud was finishing his first film, a young singing cowboy that had recently changed his name from Leonard Sly to Roy Rogers was also cast in his first film, a film called Under the Western Stars. He needed a horse for the movie and sought out the perfect companion. While he was looking, he tried Golden Cloud and instantly knew that this horse was going to be his right-hand horse for his entire acting career. During the filming of Under the Western Stars, he began to call the horse Trigger because another person had commented, "Roy, as quick as that horse of yours is, you ought to call him Trigger." After the film, he had sought to buy the horse for himself so that he could ride him all the time for about $2,500. Today, that would be roughly the equivalent of $30,000. Because of this high amount, he made payments to Golden Cloud, Trigger's original owner, until he eventually owned him himself. Trigger appeared in all of Roy Rogers' movies, over 88, and in all 100, some say 104, of the Roy Rogers show that aired on television from 1951 to 1957. As Trigger's acting career blossomed, he became known as the smartest horse in the movies. He was able to perform over 100 recognizable tricks, including counting, doing the hula, untying ropes, knocking on doors, and being able to walk on his back legs on command. He also never needed to have Roy use his reins, a whip, or any spurs while he was ridden. He responded completely to touch and hand movements. Trigger retired from show business when Roy stopped doing The Roy Rogers Show on television in 1957. And while he did occasionally tour the countryside, he was retired to a stable near the Rogers home where he could roam through the green grass, relax in the California sunshine, and had quite a few different horse friends to live out the rest of his days with. He passed away peacefully in 1965, and assuming he was born somewhere in 1932, he would have been 33 years old at the time of his passing. Another famous horse was Bamboo Harvester, and he portrayed Mr. Ed in the show Mr. Ed. He was a Palomino born in 1949 and was from a long line of show horses. His father, Harvester, was one of the prize horses of the San Fernando Valley in California. And before he became a movie star, he was a show horse as well. When his show career ended, he was cast as Mr. Ed in the show Mr. Ed, and he had a feisty attitude. He was known to call it quits in the middle of a scene by storming off stage and refusing to come back. He was also known to drink sweet tea by the gallon and had to have 20 pounds of hay every day. Despite being called a diva at times, Bamboo was actually quite professional. It was common for him to complete his scenes in just one take. Even if the scenes were somewhat complicated or involved a lot of activity and training, he was able to do all he needed to do in a short time frame. One producer actually said that Bamboo was the easiest one to work with. It was the humans that were always messing up the shots. His stellar acting even won him quite a few Patsy Awards. Patsy, or P-A-T-S-Y, stands for the Performing Animal Top Star of the Year. Other animals, such as Lassie, Benji, Francis the Talking Mule, and Tramp the Dog, also received these prestigious awards. He did have one co-star named Pumpkin, who was also a Palomino horse that was trained to talk, that would make appearances in commercials and would go on other award-winning shows like Green Acres and would act similar to Bamboo Harvester.
Well, Leo, I hope you win those 3 games in your home stand.
Why, we're a cinch, thanks to... Hey, what's going on out there? What's all this clowning around here, John? You know we got a big game tonight.
Ignore my horse. He's just a show-off.
It was the horse's idea, Leo. We look around, and there he is with a bat in his mouth.
It'll make a great publicity shot, Leo.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Say, is it okay if Sandy tosses one to him nice and easy?
Sure. Ed wants to make a fool of himself. It's okay with me.
All right. Sandy, nice and easy, huh, buddy? Okay, John.
Did you see that?
I don't believe it.
Slide, Ed! Slide!
You know, that's the smartest horse I ever saw.
Well, he's not so smart. He forgot to touch second base.
Most television and film require multiple horses to play a character. Just like human actors, horses can have multiple other horses that perform with them. However, sometimes those multiple horses aren't able to complete a scene. Having a real horse creates more realism to a movie or film, and while they can perform and do a lot of different things and tricks, there are some things that a horse isn't going to be able to do. When that happens, a small amount of CGI can be used, or a cartoon or animated horse can be created. These kinds of horses are essential for certain scenes because they don't have physical or mental limitations that the real horses have. There also isn't a risk of injury or scaring the horse and his rider. A CGI horse is created with a computer and a software program. These kinds of horses can be created to look like the real ones and placed into different scenes and settings to complete a movie. Such as in the new film Mulan, they had to create a CGI horse for one of the running scenes when they're in the mountains. And while most horses were used during the film, that particular scene, as well as a few others, needed a CGI horse instead. A cartoon or animated horse is created when a cartoon or animated rider needs a horse. They also can be added in if the writers are looking to add some more humor to the movie. That's the reasoning for Maximus, the horse in Tangled, being created. He added depth to the film by being tough, adding some additional moments of humor, and most of the royal guards have a horse. The story would have changed if he wasn't part of it. So even though he isn't a real horse, he is still just as famous as others like Trigger.